and welcome to College Football Rundown. I'm Jeremy Smith alongside Glenn Shaw. We're less than a week away from the college football season. We're going to dive into some of the top SEC teams in both the East and West divisions and give you some in-depth previews on those teams. So Glenn, just overall, before we dive into some of those teams, what are your thoughts overall as we're less than now than a week away from SEC football?
Yeah, it's a lot of excitement in the air, and I think a lot of people are ready to see what these teams have in store. The game of the week for me so far going into this is Texas A&M and South Carolina, both teams who have lost a lot of key playmakers such as Carlin Shaw, Johnny Manziel. How do these teams face off in the first game, getting the jitters out of the way? Big implications for both teams, especially South Carolina being in the top 10, trying to get into that playoff picture talk. It's going to be interesting.
Definitely so, and let's dive right into South Carolina. They open up this Thursday night, actually, like you just said, against Texas A&M on the SEC Network. Out goes Connor Shaw. Dylan Thompson now in at quarterback for the Gamecocks. Now he has some experience. He's definitely had some playing time, so that's definitely going to bode well for the South Carolina offense because they return a very veteran offensive line as well as a great running back in the backfield, Mike Davis. So that's definitely going to take some pressure off of Thompson. Yes, they do lose Quarles and Clowney on the defensive lines, but they still have a lot of talent there. But kind of where do you see this South Carolina offense, being as, yes, they lost Shaw, but they still have a lot of talent there.
They got a lot of talent, and I think it's going to be one of the best offensive lines in the SEC. And I think when you look at it, Mike Davis is going to be carrying a lot of the load. He's got a lot of experience, had a great year last year. Can Dylan Thompson, though, create those pass plays? Yes, he can. A lot of doubters out there saying, well, Connor Shaw, he's gone. Hey, don't worry about it. Dylan Thompson had some play, so he knows the experience. I think the question for South Carolina right now is their defense. Secondary, they lost a lot in the secondary. A couple are maybe ineligible. Defensively, if I'm South Carolina, that's where the concern is for them right now.
Definitely, and competing with the likes of Georgia, that's definitely going to be something they need to improve upon to be ready for their Week 3 matchup against the Bulldogs. So we've got to dive right into the Georgia Bulldogs, actually. Open up the season on Saturday against the Clemson Tigers. They get them in Athens, Georgia this year, trying to get revenge after the close defeat a year ago. Georgia, another team, just kind of like South Carolina, returning a lot of talent on the offensive side of the football, except a different quarterback, Hudson Mason. Hudson Mason, a fifth-year senior, redshirted 2 years ago to be able to give him this year of eligibility, is a very experienced quarterback, got a good bit of playing time last year after Aaron Murray went down with the torn ACL against Kentucky. But this team definitely has a lot of firepower on offense, led by the likes of Todd Gurley and Keith Marshall. And then the receivers, Michael Bennett, Justice Scott Wesley, Malcolm Mitchell, Chris Conley. I mean, this team is loaded on offense. And defensively, you would have to believe they're going to be better. Bringing Jeremy Pruitt in from Florida State, changing the whole mindset on that defense, they definitely look to improve.
Well, I think the question for me is, we all know how good Jeremy Pruitt was at Florida State. He led them to a national championship. That defense was very sound. The question is for me, Jeremy, is Georgia. Yes, they have a lot of playmakers, a lot of athletes on that Georgia defense, but they're not used to playing winning football. And how long will it take for them to install or have them intake that winning football? Are they buying into the system? And I think that's going to be important, especially the first game to Clemson. Now, I tell you what, Hudson Mason. Many Georgia fans wouldn't have thought that ACL tear to Aaron Murray would be significant. And what I mean by that is Hudson Mason got some experience before this year where he'd be deer out of headlights. Yes. So, whereas we can still say that he's probably got a lot of room to grow. But having Todd Gurley and Keith Marshall in the backfield is going to be huge for him. And just like you said, they got some key receivers back. They're playmakers. Get the ball to them, let them create their own plays. I think this is going to be a very exciting team to watch and definitely a team to look forward to have a big year.
Definitely so. The only question mark I would say when you look at the offensive side of the ball is their offensive line. They lost a few starters on that offensive line, and out of the 14 teams on the offensive line, they actually average the lowest in weight among the 5 starters on the offensive line, just under 300 pounds on average, which is so that can be a good or bad thing. It could be good for athleticism. So, yeah, it definitely looks to be a competitive year in the SEC East for sure.
Well, let's take a look at the SEC West. Everybody talking about Alabama and Auburn. Well, what they're not talking about is LSU. And who would ever thought that LSU would come into the season as a sleeping giant? But that, to me, is exactly what they are. They had to replace that Mettenberger. There's a quarterback battle going on with Anthony Jennings and Brendan Harris right now. They haven't named a starter. I imagine they probably will coming into practice week. But let's not forget the #1 recruit and Fournette is coming in as a running back. This kid is massive. And this team is going to have the type of defense that they're used to. John Chavis bringing in a very experienced defense. I think probably one of the strongest defenses in the conference this year. But I think a lot of question is, Jeremy, is can this LSU team have enough bite, if you will, going into playing Alabama's, the Auburns, the Texas A&M's of the bunch? And let's not forget about Ole Miss. We did a preview about them a couple days ago. They're kind of in the mix as well. But I tell you what, this LSU team can very well be a surprising team in the West.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the whole time Les Miles has been at LSU, he's been a recruiting master. Definitely getting the talent in at LSU, and I think they're absolutely a contender in the SEC. We just saw a team in Auburn that went 3-9 the year before come all the way back and win the SEC championship.
That's not normal, though.
No. I understand that. Yeah, that's definitely an unforeseen thing that you do not predict. But no, this LSU team is definitely going to be in the mix. And, I mean, do we think that they're better than Alabama and Auburn for the season? I wouldn't say that, at least as of right now, unless something changes. But they're definitely going to be up there in maybe one of the best divisions in college football. I mean, it is absolutely loaded from top to bottom.
No doubt about it. Let's talk about the Auburn Tigers. Auburn Tigers, we kind of feel like they're going to finish at number 2, close behind Alabama, and I'll tell you why. Nick Marshall is a fantastic quarterback. But who do they lose? Trey Mason. And when I watched back on their spring game, they do have some explosive playmakers. But I think for Auburn, teams are going to start figuring out about this Auburn football team, the spread, and how they run the football. The question is, will they line 8 in a box and challenge Nick Marshall's throwing abilities? If I was a defensive coordinator, I would. That's where I think the progress should have been made for Nick Marshall through spring practice going into fall camp, is improving that passing down. Now, defensively, they did lose a few guys, but I think defensively they're going to be all right. Question is, Jeremy, going in with Auburn is, can Nick Marshall repeat like he did last year, and do they have enough firepower to put up the points?
I think they definitely have enough firepower to put up points, and I think Nick Marshall has improved. You saw him gradually progress as a passer throughout the year, although granted they did rely heavy on the running game and his own running game himself. But I do definitely think that they can score the points. Now, we all saw last year that they really barely escaped a couple of those wins. I mean, Alabama and the Georgia games just stick out in your mind as the two games that you couldn't believe that they found a way to win those games.
Back-to-back weeks at that.
Exactly, yes. So, I mean, those kind of things, are something you don't see repeat themselves, especially 2 years in a row. At least we wouldn't think. But they're definitely going to be very, very good. They're definitely going to compete with the likes of Alabama and LSU, of course. I mean, the preseason number 6 for a reason. So they're going to be right up there for the SEC championship again.
Well, and I think that's the question. You brought up something good. In these close games. Are they going to be able to go into a close game and be able to win the game without a Hail Mary or without returning a field goal for a touchdown? Can this team win the close games by putting a methodical drive together?
And that's another thing. Yeah, exactly what you said. And the key thing also about those 2 games they barely escaped with last year against Georgia and Alabama, they played both those teams at their house this year. Yeah. So now those teams get a chance to get revenge in their own house. That's going to be big.
Well, guys, when we come back, we're going to preview Alabama Crimson Tide. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching College Football Rundown.